It's 5 o'clock Pacific on Friday. So you know what time it is. Oops, almost started again. All right. So first of all, I've got a special guest on. He's been on before, but it's been a long time. A couple weeks ago, I had a video, top 10 whiskey tubers I would recommend for newbies, new whiskey drinkers. And that came on the tail of another video in which at the end of recommendations for new whiskey drinkers, I recommended they watch 10 whiskey tubers. So it was a little challenging to, okay, who am I going to put on this list? I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But what I did was I chose people who specialized or had a heavy emphasis on Scotch. People had a heavy emphasis on bourbon. People who were more entertaining, right? We all, I think, all try to have some information, have some entertainment. But there are some people who are more emphasized on the entertainment side. And then also I have representatives from Scotland, the United States, and Canada, and Ireland. And then I had someone who emphasized Ireland. So I sort of covered all the bases in terms of regions. I didn't have anybody from Japan, but I covered in terms of whiskey tours from different places, different types of content, and sort of present a well-rounded portfolio of whiskey tubers that I would recommend. So all the whiskey tubers I recommended in that list, I have met them all in person, some of them several times. Met up with Bill, the Whiskey Dick, a couple times, Scotch Test Dummies a couple times, Bourbon Junkies down in Texas, Jason Calori with Mash and John, we met up down in Texas, Roy a couple times, met in Scotland. The other ones I haven't met have been Ralphie and Jeremy from Sipper Social Club. Sometimes I say Social Sipper Club. I get them mixed up. And then Rob, Whiskey in the Six, wearing one of his T-shirts tonight. Hey, Rob, how you doing, man? He's in the chat. And real quick, before I bring Jeremy on to say hello to everyone in the chat, Donner Pass Whiskey, thanks for turning in. RM Smart, thanks for tuning in. Rick McHugh, thanks for tuning in. By the way, I apologize. I'm going an hour later tonight than I normally do. But when you have a guest, you got to work around those schedules. You have to be a little more flexible on that. Mike Bennett, as always, thank you very much for tuning in, sir. Ental 10 Broke, thank you much for tuning in. Michael C 2019. C 2019, that sounds like the name of an Elijah Craig barrel proof, right? Joshua Hench, thanks for tuning in. And of course, I said Rob, Whiskey in the Six, Adam T, Aaron Hardiman, and Chris McClure. All righty. So let me bring Jeremy on. I changed my format and how I do live streams a little while back. Haven't done with a guest yet, so it might be a little bit challenging. So I want to share, maps and video and that kind of stuff, and then we're going to talk about Springbank. So in the meantime, Jeremy, thanks for coming on.
Erik, thanks for having me. Excited to be here on a Friday. Enjoy some awesome Campbeltown whiskey with you. What's going on?
So I actually don't have nearly as much experience as you and Rob do with Springbank. Although I've been to the distillery, I'm going to share a little video in a little bit. My walk around Springbank and Glengyle. What I have are 3 bottles that I brought back from the distillery. This is a Springbank 8-year-old fresh sherry cask, bottled at 56.8. This is a Kilkerran Open Day 2019. I think this one had more distribution, not that it's widely available, but I think it was sold outside the distillery. This is a 57.1, and the Glen Scotia Warehouseman edition at 56.2. So what do you got pouring tonight?
Yeah, so I've got essentially like almost a mirror of what you have, just more like the official bottlings. So this is the 2020 release of the 21-year-old. This is the Victoriana Glen Scotia, and the newest 16-year-old Kilkerran.
Nice. So one of the reasons that I put on you and Rob on, and I said in the previous video, is different people have different favorites, different emphasis, different things that they lean towards. Even, you could be just Scotch and just spend all your time talking about, Speyside, Highlands. There's 50 distilleries there.
Right.
Plenty there to keep you guys, keep you busy. But you guys, it seems to me, more than a lot of other distilleries, spend a lot more time with Springbank. And so I think you have a lot more, even though I've been to the distillery, of course, done plenty of reading. But in terms
wait,
of
Eric, you've been to Scotland before?
Me?
I've never heard you mention it. I'm just kidding. Obviously, you mention it every time you get a chance.
I was like, oh, yeah, I've been here.
It's like, you know, I've been there, right? I've been there 20 times.
Yeah. So my heart is still there. My body's here. My mind's here. But my heart is still in Scotland. I'm not kidding. A couple of weeks ago, I had a dream, or it was a nightmare. And the dream was I was at an airport trying to get to Scotland, and I was lost. And I kept going up to the window. I need to get to Scotland. I need to get to Scotland. Where's my plane? Where's my plane? And the entire dream was I was running around trying to find out how to get on a plane back to Scotland.
It's like, see, I've been there before. Look at my passport. It's been stamped 3 times. You've let me in before. Get me back in, please.
But there's different kinds of knowledge and experience. Hey, Rob, thanks very much for the Canadian. Every time a Glencairn rings, an angel gets its wings. But that's my new thing from It's Wonderful Life.
Hey, put that on a T-shirt.
Exactly. But there's different kinds of knowledge. You know, there's book knowledge. There's being there gives you a whole nother sense of knowledge. But there is understanding the production that only is going to come from tasting a lot of their whiskeys. And I think you and Rob have that and can share that experience that is a part, I don't know. So when someone asks me about Springbank, I give them this much information. I can give them historical information. I can talk about production and what the place looks like. But you and Rob can talk about this bottle and that bottle and this bottle and that bottle and this vintage and this release. And so for me, anytime, and particularly lately, you've been putting out some Springbank reviews. Is I tune in on them because I'm going to get more of a sense of, okay, I want to get that one. I want to get that one. I'm going to get that one.
Right.
From you guys. So I want to show. There's one video highly recommend if you guys aren't familiar with Jeremy, and I'm going to shut up for a second here. I'll let Jeremy talk more. Here's a thumbnail from his core range of Springbank. I just rewatched that today. Highly recommend watching that. I think it's one of your best videos. I think core range videos are really helpful to viewers, consumers, and so forth to make some purchasing choices. But I think you did a real excellent presentation on that one.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think the core range video gives someone who may be new to a distillery a kind of like a nice little quick overview and a recommendation. You know, if you have, you want to buy one bottle, let's say. You know, sometimes the 10-year-old is better than the 12. Sometimes, the 15 is better than the 21, or, skip a whole age altogether because sometimes they don't come out and, they're a little bit different. So I think it gives you and someone a quick opinion about, I want one of these bottles. Which one should I get? And, you might have tasting notes in there that that might sound appealing to you, and then you can pick from that. So that's why I like doing the core range. It gives someone a snapshot of an entire distillery almost in one video.
So speaking of a snapshot, I'm going to show a video of my walk around the Springbank Distillery. Then we'll start talking a little bit about Springbank. First of all, it's easy to assume everybody knows as much as we do about whiskeys. And so one of the things I've been trying to be mindful of is people who are new, which is why I put out the video. Be more mindful of so the people are new to whiskey. So here's a sort of a Google Earth image of Scotland. So we have the Highlands, Speyside, Lowlands, and then Campbeltown down at the bottom of the map is that little peninsula west of Arran, southeast of Islay, and it's the Kintyre Peninsula. And if we zoom in, so there we have the port there, and within 10 minutes, you can park in one place and you can go from Springbank, and of course, immediately right next door to that is Glengyle, and then you could walk 10 minutes, depending on how much you've been drinking, get down to Glen Scotia. So let me show a video real quick, and then we'll talk a little bit more and get a little bit more into that. Alrighty. So I know it's probably a little bit long. Could have been better edited, but should have put together at the last second. So for those who don't know, so Springbank started in 1828, and at one time there was around 30 or so distilleries there. But due to obviously we had prohibition, we had a couple wars, and production there was more emphasized on quantity over quality. They lost a coal mine there, so a lot of jobs went out with that. So they had economic depression there. So a number of different factors, some external, some internal, basically killed the region. It was once the whiskey capital of Scotland. It eventually came down to two distilleries, Springbank and Glen Scotia. And then Springbank, in order to be a legal region, its own region, Campbeltown, Springbank bought Kilcairn, but they couldn't name it Kilcairn. They had to went with Glengyle. There's another long story behind that. But Springbank and Glengyle are essentially like twins or Siamese twins. Glengyle is only open about a third of the year. They use the same working staff in the distillery as Springbank. So Springbank then leaves staff, guys, the stillman, the washerman, everything else, head over to Glengyle to work over there. And they share, as you saw there, see a lot of the same cast for Springbank and Glengyle in the same warehouse. So when I was there in 2019, they were building a warehouse for Glengyle. By now, perhaps they have their own, but they were still using a lot of the same space. But they're so close. It's just, I mean, a real short walk to go from one to the next. So even going around Campbeltown area, it almost seems like a distillery ghost town. It's very, it seems to me, economically depressed. The only real money coming into the area is these three distilleries. It seems they could really use a tourism boost. So if you drive around, it looks really worn out. It's very similar to the area around Old Pulteney. Very, very worn out. Now you go up to Speyside, you go to Highlands, it looks very touristy.
Yeah. Nice
and shiny, new buildings, really nice places. So if you ever visit Campbeltown, it's very, very rustic. Let's call it that.
Now the casks that Springbank had outside, are they intentionally weather aging those? And do you know how long those are outside for until they get filled up? Or
that's a good question. I don't know. They are empty. But in terms of how long they're out there and they rotate them in, I wouldn't have the foggiest.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know that, because I'm not sure how many distilleries do that like weather age their casks outside.
Well, if you just Google search Scotch whiskey barrels, you'll see pictures of yards where I'm like a mountain of them. I mean, stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of them. It's better that they maintain some moisture out in the yard than dry out somewhere.
Sure.
Would be my guess.
Yeah.
But that's a really good question. There is a cooperage in Speyside. In fact, it's called Speyside Cooperage. And I drove by it and I said, okay, next time I'm in the area, I want to go visit that. But I imagine they also probably not just put together new casks, but imported casks in terms of, sherry casks and then fixed casks and stuff like that. But that's a really good question.
And so when you were there, would you spend like an afternoon or a whole day, or?
Yes, I was basically there for a whole day. I actually didn't stay in town. I stayed at a castle about 45 minutes north.
Nice.
Because and then enjoy the coast down the drive. So I took a ferry from Androssan, which is west. If you go from Glasgow and keep driving west till you hit to the coast, that's Androssan. And then if you could keep going straight, you'd run into Arran. So you get on to a ferry from there, went south underneath Arran, and then that took us into Campbeltown. You can drive and go up all the way around up north, but I took a ferry across.
Right.
But I didn't stay there in town. I stayed at a castle further up north. So Bill, the Whiskey Dictionary, just did a video. I think I posted today. He says if I finally like Springbank.
Was a fan before? What did it for him?
I should know that. I don't know. I could look it up real quick. I'm kind of curious. I think it's a bottle he had before, tasted it before, didn't like it, but it was sort of like put it on the shelf
Mm-hmm.
and then come back to it.
Right.
And it's sort of like it was an acquired taste for him, and he didn't like it right away. And for the life of me, I'm thinking it's a 21, but I could be wrong.
People in the chat are saying the 13-year-old green.
Oh, okay, that's right. Yep.
So I'm trying to think of what one that was. Is that like a really old green label, or just like a special edition? Because usually it's 15 years for the green, right?
So this is where the knowledge of
I have no answer for that question. 13-year-old.
I hadn't the foggiest idea. You and Rob know the core range. You know these bottles a lot better than I do. I just know history. I've been to the place, and I've really enjoyed these whiskeys. I've tasted, Springbank and these other bottles, but this is sort of on my to-do list. In fact, I've had people say, "Hey, you ever going to do a series on Campbeltown?" And when I get some more shelf space, I'll buy some more bottles and do some. So, but that's sort of a topic of question. I think how people. So, I have never really picked up on a funk that people talk about. Oh. So when people talk about a Springbank funk, what are they talking about?
Well, I mean, I've described it as many different things. Anything from like coastal elements, like dunnage warehouse, moldiness, like weird cheese, all the way to like, kind of a damp kind of hay note. It kind of varies. And it is hard to describe into words because it's so unique. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of all those things together, in my opinion. And it's just you kind of find it in all these Springbanks, some a lot more than others. It's even maybe like a little bit of like gasoline kind of note in there too. It's all these weird kind of elements together that kind of gives you this funkiness.
So does it typically, in terms of intensity, is it something that's like really in your face? You think of like Isla peated. The peat is, let's say like, Lagavulin and Lefroy and so forth. Right. It's in your face. Is it something that's in your face, or is it more of just sort of like the subtle note? What's the intensity of how you would describe this?
I mean, it depends on the Springbank. Some of them, yeah, it's definitely like hugely, hugely influential. Others kind of more subtle, maybe in the background a little bit more. But definitely noticeable when you are familiar with drinking a lot of different Springbanks. You kind of get to know it. You're like, okay, this is Springbank, and it becomes easy to pick out of a lineup just because you can get that funky note, which is hard to describe. But yeah, I'd say in pretty much every single Springbank, it's there in some level of intensity. Maybe the 18-year-old doesn't have as much of it in my experience, whereas, the 12-year-old cask strength has a lot. ABV probably plays a role in that. But yeah, I mean, even the basic 10-year-old, the 46% 10-year-old, I mean, you get a little bit of funkiness in there too. And the weird thing about Springbank is that their core range changes every single year. They don't match the same proportions of sherry casks as bourbon casks. Sometimes they're putting in rum, sometimes they're putting in port. Each year is a little bit different. So it almost becomes like a special release. Every single year is pretty different with Springbank.
So right now I'm working on the Glen Scotia. This is the warehouse edition. And so in describing whiskeys, there are some descriptions that are precise and right on, and people know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And tasting notes are not purely subjective. If I can describe a whiskey and you can tell me what it is based on my descriptions, that means we have some sort of common understanding as what that refers to, and more than likely what it is. But sometimes other things, we get in the ballpark and they're not exact and whatever. So when I think of maybe my perception of funk is like someone been wearing their socks for too many days.
Yep. Yeah, that's another great descriptor, like like old socks. Yeah, for sure.
But I would find that offensive.
Yeah.
Whereas these whiskeys There is, to me, again, this is just, it's a ballpark, figure. It's not exact. To me, these seem to me have more of a slight umami character.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, my brother lives with me. We share a house together, and he's been cooking. I'm not that great of a cook. He's a really, really good cook. And I come home, and the whole house, he's been using sesame seed oil. He's been making these like sauces like for an Asian food sauce. Yeah. And in fact, he had a big pot here that he uses as a wok. And he's like, smell, see if you can see what, spices over I can pick up. And it had, oh, son of a gun. It's kind of like licorice, or anise, but it's not. Mm-hmm. And now I can't remember the name of the spices or the herb is. Anyway, I get more of that from this than anything, which I find sort of a unique Asian delicacy to it. That's hard to get, that umami character, rather than something that's offensive and stinky that I wouldn't want to have. And so I've never wondered, why would anybody not like Springbank or whatever? I like that kind of umami character. So do you think that's what they're talking about then? Or you guys are typically talking about when we talk about a funk?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the descriptors that sometimes people give out for the funk, they're not always pleasant. Like you said, like moldy socks and just mold in general, and all these things, but it somehow works. I'm sure that you've described a Lafroig as very like asphalt tar. It tastes like you're taking a bite out of a road, and it's just delicious. And people are like, "What are you talking about? Like, how would you possibly think that those descriptors are something good?" But it somehow works when you combine it with all the fruit characteristics and whatever else goes along with the cask maturation. It just is very unique and very different, and that's why I think people gravitate towards Campbeltown, and why there's a huge following, huge cult following. And it's not even a cult anymore. It's very mainstream as far as Springbank's concerned.
So Joseph Horton here brought him up here. Fennel. That's what I was trying to think of. Is fennel?
Yeah.
Fennel is it? So to me, of course, coming from the wine background, when I think of wines that are funky, it's one or two things. One, it's some sort of flaw due to dirty winemaking, mm-hmm. or there's a yeast called Brettanomyces. And sometimes considered a spoilage yeast. But on Burgundy wines, Pinot Noir, there could be a slight earthy Brett character. And in minuscule amounts, you can overdo it with Brett or Brettanomyces, but in minuscule amount, it gives a wine an interest. Mm. In addition to just being fruity, there's this kind of slight earthy character to it. And I think that's parallel to what I'm experiencing just on the nose on these whiskeys, is that earthy umami, mm-hmm. but also dirty old shirt that you threw in the corner kind of.
Yeah. And I do wonder if it has something to do with the yeast they're using. It'd be great to try the distillate, like Springbank distillate, and just see what you're pulling from that without any cask influence. I don't know if you get a chance to do that at the distillery. I've had a few distillates from like Balvenie and Highland Park, and it's really interesting to try them. You get that kind of pure, unadulterated spirit, and you can kind of taste a little bit of that like house style in those, which is really interesting. So I'd love to try Springbank distillate.
You can buy a bottle of distillate at the distillery, but I was rationing luggage space.
Yeah.
How much am I going to fit in there? Do I really want to buy another bottle?
No, yes, I just want to try. I wouldn't need like a whole bottle. Do they bottle it at cask strength, or do they dilute it down?
Oh, I'm sure it's cask strength.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure it's cask strength.
Yeah.
So I brought back a little mini of. I have one from the one Roy and I went to down there in the Lowlands that reopened. It begins with an A. Slipping my mind.
Akatoshan?
No, it's a newly reopened one. It closed. Annandale.
Oh, okay.
Annandale, and I brought one back from Aaron's new distillery, Lag Distillery. Brought one back from there as well. So I'd like, how many bottles of new make do I want to bring back? But I think so. So people are tuning in. If there's any, people are new to whiskey, maybe you haven't tried Campbeltown regions. So I would say if you're used to big, fruitier whiskeys, or if you've even gotten your toes, into peated whiskeys, I would say these are definitely worth checking out. Of course, I have stuff from the distillery that the creme de la creme, kind of come from a distillery. But these are definitely worth checking out, and I definitely want to buy more bottles and check out Jeremy's review of them. What do you think? Since I'm an Ardbeg nut, and you guys do a lot more spring, what is it about these whiskeys that you guys find so? And I know you're speaking for Rob here, but what do you think? This is what sort of I love this about these whiskeys.
I think it's the profile. The profile is very unique. It's completely different than something you would get from a Highland or an Islay, but it kind of combines elements of different areas, because you do get a little bit of peat. They do peat the barley slightly, so you're pulling these elements together, but it's creating this like very unique profile, and it's very distinct and different. And I think the richness of these whiskeys, they're very bold. They're usually bottled at a higher ABV. I think, I don't think you get anything less than 46 from pretty much any Campbeltown. I don't think anyone bottles under 46 there, any of these three anyway. No. So it's the uniqueness, and it's the allure of it. I mean, you never know what you're going to get with these whiskeys. Like I said, Springbank changes it up every single year. The core range changes. So it's interesting to try when they throw in different cask maturation types. But yeah, I think it's just simply the uniqueness of the profile. It's hard to explain, but it's just something that you're getting that other regions just do not provide.
So one of the things about, sort of the character of the distillery, the Mitchell family owned Springbank. I can't remember. I don't know if the old man is still alive, but I think there's he didn't have any children. There's 3 nephews on the board. They have a board of 12. Everything there, if they had a complete power outage, the only thing they wouldn't be able to do, as long as they had some lighting for the most part, is sell anything, because the only computer they got in there is the cash register. If people saw the video or go back and watch the video again, you saw a chalkboard where they're making chalk marks. You see, not coal, freaking. So you see the peat there. Everything's old school. The only distillery that is that old school, without any automation, is get my brain to work. Way up north, Glen. Oh, son of a gun! I hate it when Ben Romick. Ben Romick. Oh, yeah. This is Ben Romick. Ben Romick.
I think to your point is it's like they use the old school methods, right? It's all attention to detail. It's all very hands-on. I think that Springbank is one of the only distilleries that has their own bottling plant, right? They bottle their own stuff. They're always very hands-on, like nothing kind of gets out of their grasp. And that old school attention to detail. They don't produce that much whiskey compared to other distilleries. But I think what you're getting is the quality and the quality control that they have, because they do everything just old school. And you can tell with the whiskey for sure.
So that's sort of, if you can visit, whether you're visiting a Kentucky distillery or a distillery up there in Canada. By the way, I have it on my bucket list. In 2 major regions I haven't studied yet has been Canada and Japan. One of these days, I'm going to get up to meet you guys up there in Canada and visit some distilleries up there.
Absolutely.
But being there and walking around and seeing the place and then tasting the whiskeys, you can see a reflection, or taste and smell a reflection of a philosophy, of a worldview, of a mindset, of a family operation, and then you smell and taste it in the whiskeys. That's what's. And if they started to modernize, it would probably then be reflected in the whiskeys. They wouldn't be able to stay old school in the profiles. If they started to modernize, there would be some sort of. If how you think and feel changes, it affects how you do things.
Yeah.
And if how you think and feel towards your whiskeys and how you do production changes, it's going to affect. Which you guys were just recently talking about Glendronach.
Yes.
And unfortunate changes that are going there with the changes of a master distiller. And when you change a philosophy and your approach and your thinking, eventually it works its way out into the whiskeys.
Yeah. Really unfortunate that Glendronach is starting to chill filter their whiskey, or at least removing the non-chill filtered descriptor from their labels, with obviously intention of starting to chill filter some stuff. Unfortunate. Yeah, it sucks, right? Because new ownership, new goals, it sucks. I mean, like, where's the appeal from Glendronach now? I mean, back when they had all of these awesome releases coming out because the distillery was not producing whiskey for 6 years, and you got all these old expressions coming into these younger age statements, and it was great value and it was great whiskey.
But the sort of, if you meet a musician who you really, really like, or a painter or an artist, and you get to know them as a people, an art or a craft is a reflection of the person. And it's why I've always been interested in the place, the production, the people, and the product, because you start to see the correlation between these. And it's, so we have our fingers crossed that when the old man dies there at the Springbank, that the nephews will keep things as they are and they won't change a thing. But there is one drawback to that, which is, as I was talking about last week live, I was talking about quantity versus quality. And then when you try to ramp up quantity, you tend to lose control of quality control. Mm-hmm. And so things start to go. If they're not producing quantity and they have high quality and people like you and Rob rave about them all the time, what happens to the prices?
Right. Yeah, no, it's inevitable. And you see it with Springbank. And I like your analogy about, putting it into almost like music, where it's like, you lose your front man of a big rock band and, you still have the instrumental, but you're missing that piece that made it great. And, with Billy Walker leaving Glendronach, you still have the instrumentals in place, but you lost your lead singer, and now it's completely changed and it's completely different, right? It's like listening to Queen with Adam Lambert. It's not the same.
No. Although I did like Sammy Hagar more than like David Lee Roth.
There you go. That's the outlying case. Yeah.
So what do you drink? What do you got in front of you now?
So this is the Glen Scotia, the Victoriana. So this one I opened up. I've only really drank it once. This is the second pour I've had of it. So this is cask strength, 54.2% ABV. It's finished in charred oak. I'm not sure if it's virgin charred oak or an ex-bourbon charred oak cask. Judging by the color, it's pretty pale. So I'd say if there is sherry influence, it's pretty light. But lots of good stuff going on with this. It's very spirit-driven. I'm not sure how old this is. It's NAS. I'd say it's pretty young, but delicious stuff.
So I tasted a Victoriana at the distillery, and the first thing I did was because I thought, wow, I really like this. But before I, take up this valuable real estate in my luggage, I wanted to see if they had carried back home. So I quickly got out my phone, and I could get it back home at a Total Wine and More. But I haven't gotten around to
That's probably the hardest part about taking a trip to Scotland is your luggage management with bottles coming back. You have to make cuts, and like that's hard to do. It's like picking a favorite child or something.
Right. So my first trip out there, I was able to send bottles back when I was on Isla and stayed at it's sort of like little cottages. The guy who managed them, he would also ship bottles for you, and it would go through the whiskey auctions, the Scotch whiskey auctions. Okay. So he would wrap it up. You just hear the bottles. He would wrap it up, and you'd pay for it, and then he would take care of it for you. And by the time you got home, the bottles were there. And that was a great service. Yeah,
there's a service that does that, or used to do that, where if you were buying a bottle that was only they only shipped it to like certain countries in the UK or something, they wouldn't ship it to North America. You could ship it to their location and they would reship it for you or something like that. So yeah, that's the route you got to go. You got to jump through hoops for these bottles sometimes.
Interesting. So I'm reading this one. The print's really, really small. So this was distilled in 2005, bottled in August 2018. It has a cask number and so forth. Selected by Ian McAllister, the distillery manager. I would say, and of course I should have looked this up before. I would say this is probably bourbon and sherry cask. It's got some of the sherry. Yeah, there we go. Man, the print is so small on these. Richard American. Hey, I was right.
Yeah.
Richard American. Whoa, oak, and then first fill Oloroso. So I was right. Even before I could read it, the print is so small. So, and the reason why I thought that the sherry is there, you get the hints of fig, dates, and raisins, but it's not like this, which I'll get to. This one's all sherry cask. And so when sherry notes are there, but they're not smack in the face, that means it's probably been spent some time first with a bourbon cask. And then it just has a sort of a touch of the sherry influence there. And then color-wise, I mean, it's golden in comparison to, this dark tan character there. Mm-hmm. But then you talk about cheese. That's probably you think if you Roquefort, blue cheese, maybe Munster, it's just a whiff. It's not, it's just a whiff. It's just barely there, but that slight cheesy note there definitely is there. But I never would have identified it as cheese. But now that you say it, it's definitely there.
Yeah. It's the descriptors that come out. I mean, if you watch reviews or read reviews on Springbank, you do get, or any Campbeltown, you'll get blue cheese dressing. You'll get those kind of off-ball, more potent cheeses as tasting notes. And, it's different. I think everyone would have a different descriptor of what they think the funk element is in these Campbeltown whiskeys.
So if you like, I'll send you a sample of all three of these.
Yeah, I'd love that.
And I'll send them to you. And you probably don't have one of my new coins. I'll send you one of my new coins.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's the. Is it metal?
Yeah, this one's metal. It's larger and heavier. And this one's got the beard. Whereas the other one, did you have one of my older ones?
Yeah, you did send me the older one. Yeah,
the Marine Corps. That one had the Marine. That was without the beard, and that was the Marine Corps colors. Right. Smaller. And this is. I've got one of yours here, Sipper Social Club.
Nice.
Coins here, and I got to turn the angles so people can see it. You still have these available?
Those are all sold out. I do have a design ready to go for another coin. I'm just waiting on finalizing a design for the Whiskey Rant. So we're going to do a Whiskey Rant coin as well. So.
Oh, that's another thing you guys do that I really, really like. So
the podcast.
One of the challenges is in the Whiskey Tuber, it seems like either you got to go short or long, because somewhere in the middle, people tend to, hey, I got 10 minutes. I can watch a video while I'm sitting there on the can.
Right.
Yeah, that's when I watch Rob's videos, when I'm sitting on the shitter.
Yeah, that's what everyone watches them.
So, but I like the rants because the rant is really, you guys are podcasters. There's nothing to look. You guys are facing away from the camera. You're facing towards each other.
Right.
But I can do something else while I'm listening to you guys.
Yeah.
So I really, really, really enjoyed those. The only one I've watched, actually looking at it, is when you had Ralphie on. But the other ones I more or less just kind of listened to. But I really, really like those. There was a channel called Ear Whiskey. He was over in Denmark that I really, really liked. I thought he had the potential to become sort of the Joe Rogan of the Whiskey Tuber world. But he quit, and he had some great guests on there. But it was all long format channel. But for whatever reason, family, kids, COVID, whatever, he quit putting out stuff. He had Roy on there. He had some really great guests on there. But I really like the segment that you guys have. So if you guys, I like the dialogue. I like the going back and forth. So if anybody's watching her, if you have not only check out Jeremy's content and Rob, their content on particularly Campbeltown whiskeys, but check out their whiskey rants, and where you can hear them bitch, moan, groan, and complain about everything going on in the whiskey world. So what gave you the guys the idea to start doing that?
I think it was Rob's idea to do a podcast. Rob is very entrepreneurial, and he has millions of ideas of many things he wants to do. I think at one point in time, he was like, "Oh, we should do, a sports review channel. We should do a movie review channel, like comic." I'm like, where are you getting the time to do all this stuff? But no, he came up with the podcast idea. I'm like, I think it's a great idea. I really like being able to kind of do like what we would do on a live, but like more structured, bring in like elements, like bring in video, bring in images, edit it the way we wanted to. And I think the format looks great. Like, I mean, people are like, I watch a little bit of on YouTube, and then if I'm in my car, I just put it on the podcast because we release it on YouTube, and then you can get it just audio only through any podcast streaming service. So yeah, it's a great way to get the content out. And so I think it was Rob's idea to do the podcast as far as like structuring it. We have a rant topic. We talk about secondary market, where we find like interesting things we see in auctions or just on the secondary. We talk about that. We always bitch about the LCBO, which is the government-controlled liquor store that's in our province that is the only place you can buy spirits here. We always like to bitch about that. And then we talk about what's happening in YouTube and WhiskeyTube and what other people are putting out content-wise and great stuff like that all the time.
So I'm moving on to the Kilcairn. This is Open Day 2019 from their May Festival. 15-year-old. You still sipping on the same one?
Yeah, I think I'll pour the Kilcairn as well. So the Kilcairn 16. This is one of their newest releases, if not maybe their newest one. I'm not sure. But it's their oldest release. The 16-year-old age statement is the oldest stuff they have right now. This one is, I think it's 98% ex-bourbon and 2% Madeira. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And it's really just kind of the same kind of profile as you get with the Kilcairn 12. And I think the Kilcairn 12-year-old is a great bottle for anyone who just wants to see what Campbeltown is about. Very approachable, delicious whiskey. 12 years old, 46% ABV, non-chill filtered, no added color, of course. And it's a great introduction to that. This 16-year-old is essentially that profile, more rounded out, well-aged, it's almost just like the 12-year-old aged 4 extra years.
The one thing about Madeira Cash is I wish they would tell you what kind of Madeira it is.
Yeah.
I put up that video this week, which I was sort of hesitant putting it out because I was like, is this going to be too much of a wine thing and people aren't into wine and maybe, it'll be, oh no, Erik, because they're always talking about wine, but it's done really well and people really, really, really liked it. So I'm glad I put it out, but I wasn't really sure, but there's different types of Madeira. So I'm kind of curious. I wish they would tell you it's a Malmsey, it's a Boal, a Cercial, or a Negremore, or something like that. What kind of Madeira cask it is. Yeah,
the video you did on the wine was great. Really, really informative. I don't know much about wine. I'm not a wine drinker, but I learned lots from that video, and that was really good. Really cool. Yeah, I didn't know that all the different types of Muscat, because I thought the Muscat was just a regular old white grape.
Well, even so, and I'm not going to start. Don't get me started talking about wine. So there's a whole family of Pinot. So basically grapes are highly mutative. You don't plant vineyards with seeds. You use a cutting. If you plant with seeds, it'll mutate, and whatever it is you wanted, you're not going to get. It mutates a lot. But I've seen a vine that it had red Pinot Noir, Pinot grapes, and white Pinot. So it had Pinot Noir and Pinot Blanc on the same vine because it mutates so much. So out of Pinot, you have Pinot Grigio or Pinot, which is gray, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Noir, which is black, Pinot Meunier. So you have all these different Pinots, and the same thing with Muscat. The sun's coming through a window here, so it's going to get a little weird here in a second. It turns out the lighting. And so you have various Muscats as well, types of Muscat. They all generally tend to be, I would say, citrus, floral, typically made sweet. You can get a dry Muscat. But Muscat et Petit Grand, or grains, as I think I pronounced it, is probably the most well-known and popular and one of the higher quality ones. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe they're not specific as to what type, just because maybe they're using multiple types?
Or they think the consumer isn't going to really know. I mean,
Right.
how many people? I very rarely do I meet anyone who likes Madeira and sits around and drinks it.
Right. Yeah.
And yet it's a very food friendly wine. The oldest I had a 1908 Boal, and it had been open for 5 years and it was still fresh. And for Americans, what the founders, after they signed the Declaration of Independence, what they were drinking was Madeira. So it has sort of an American tradition history to it.
Are you drinking any fortified wines? Like, I don't really know anyone who drinks fortified, maybe port.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm like, who's buying fortified wine to drink?
So port and sherry are very, 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 very big with the Brits, particularly probably an older generation. But some sherry houses are owned by Scotsmen, such as Sandeman. So traditionally, sherry was being imported up to Scotland by from bodegas owned by Scotsmen, and the casks are sitting there on the docks, and they go, "Hey, let's put some whiskey in them casks," and voila, you had sherry cask influence whiskey. And then eventually, when the laws changed, actually fairly recently down in Spain, where you're not allowed to ship out in casks, it has to go on bottles. Then they came up with Plan B, that they started seasoning casks and do it in that fashion.
Like, how many bottles of sherry do you have in your collection right now?
I have 2 bottles of Fino. I'm looking at them. 2 bottles of Fino. I got some more in my closet. I have an Amontillado, and I have a bottle of Palo Cantado.
Yeah. Any port? You get into some old ports or no?
I have. Yeah, I have. In fact, I have one right here. I showed this one in the video. I have a 1966 Taylor Fladgate here, and I have a Taylor Fladgate 10-year-old Ruby, which is probably like a 15-year-old. It's not a very expensive port, but these don't go bad. You can open a bottle and it'll be good for about a year.
Yeah,
so you don't have to worry about killing it right away.
It's a good thing about port. Yeah. Right on.
So I get something similar, but I would say the Glen Scotia had a lot more of that cheesy funk than the Kilkerran, but it does have just a lot more minute whiff of it. But I'm also getting a lot more. The maltiness is showing up a lot more as well.
Yeah. See, this Kilkerran has less, and if I went to the Springbank's got a lot more.
Taste and sensibility. Thank you very much. He says, I drink a lot of Campbeltown and I drink a lot of fortified wine. So there you go. Every time a Glencairn rings, an angel rings.
I think you had a super chat earlier too.
Oh, did I miss one earlier? Sorry, I was so focused. If I missed one, someone let me know. I'll definitely one. I'm scrolling up real quick. Oh, Kyle Walker, $10 or $9.99. He says, how would you compare? Sorry. How would you compare, Kyle? I apologize, but I'm glad someone brought it up. Glad Jeremy brought it up. How would you compare Kilkerran versus Springbank? That's an excellent question. Springbank to me is much easier on my palate, possibly sweeter. Kilkerran is more dry and bitter to me. Is it my palate? Love your live stream. Well, thank you very much. So I don't have enough experience with both. In order to have formal opinion, I think you need to have at least 10 or 20 of whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's so different between each Springbank, right? Because what you described, essentially, you could pick out in any Springbank and in any Kilkerran. I mean, I've got that Kilkerran 8-year-old, which is a recharred Oloroso cask, and it's really, really heavy. It's cask strength, and it's definitely a bigger hit to your palate than a Kilkerran, or sorry, than a Springbank would be. So it all just depends. I think that you get characteristics from you get sweet, you get bitter in Springbank and in Kilkerran. So it just really depends. If you're looking at, let's say, Kilkerran 12-year-old versus Springbank 12-year-old, I'd say that the Kilkerran would probably be the sweeter profile, and the Springbank would be maybe the more kind of complex stuff. You get those, like, you get bitter notes, and you get more funkiness and stuff like that. So it just depends. I mean, it depends what you've had and what you're talking about, because they're all so different.
So in terms of like knowledge, you know, I mean, I'm a studious person, but I'm never going to try to blow smoke up someone's ass and try to come across as knowing more than I really do. And so I have no problem saying, if someone asks me a bourbon question, I can talk all day about bourbon, but eventually I'm going to say, but if you really want to know, go talk to Jason Mash Drum. You know, I can tell you as much as I can tell you, and for the average person that has questions, and I can recommend this and that and this and that and this and that and that. But there's going to come a point where I'm going to go, but I know some other whiskey tubers who know more, and so I'm going to steer them in that direction. And so with Springbank, that's probably going to be you as well. I think Alan, Whiskey Friend, probably has a lot of experience as well, particularly with the Kilcairns. He's got quite the lineup. Who else, is anybody else you can think of sort of in that would really be familiar with all it? Ralphie, of course.
Ralphie's done everything. As far as other whiskey tubers, I don't know. Like the Scotch test dummies don't do that much Springbank, right? I don't think they've done really hardly any. I don't think that they gravitate towards Springbank as much. But yeah, Ralphie definitely. And if you want to look at the best place for a huge selection of reviews where they have everything is whiskybase.com. You can check there. You can check whiskeyfun.com with Serge. He does everything too. So those sources, you'll find any bottle you're looking for pretty much.
So someone else who's a really good review. So, and I've chatted with him before. Someone who's a really good reviewer, I think has a good nose, good palate, and an insane collection is the Whiskey Hound. You familiar with the Whiskey Hound?
The Liquor Hound?
Liquor Hound, not Whiskey Hound. I just spilled a little bit.
Yes, Liquor Hound. Yeah,
throw in there. We're good.
Yeah, absolutely. Liquor Hound for sure.
I'm gonna grab a paper towel real quick. But the one problem I have with him, and I sent a text on it, he has no playlists. He has no playlists. Whatever you see at the top of his. So when you have a YouTube channel, and you know someone goes to your channel, that's valuable real estate. It's right. If anybody else is a whiskey tuber, use your real estate, fill it up. The default is like that YouTube automatic puts there's like recent videos or top videos or something like that. You don't want that. So if you're doing all bourbons, make a channel for this distillery or this brand. And if you're doing or a generalist, here's my Scotch videos, here's my Irish videos, here's my if you do a lot of Campbeltown, or here's my you can get if you do a lot of Islay, here's my Islay. Make those playlists. It makes people available to, hey, what does Jeremy think? What does Rob think? What does Erik think about this? And they can scroll through everything within that category and then find a video. And if you're a whiskey, this is a tip for whiskey tuber, you can actually set that playlist up so someone doesn't need to click on videos. They could start at the beginning of the playlist and they can binge watch all your entire playlist one after another. You can make it so it'll play one after another and stay. Hey, Bill, how you doing, man? And we were talking about you earlier. I don't know if you were on there earlier. So yeah, drinking the Springbank 13. He's a recent convert. He's a recent convert to enjoying Springbank. So
yeah,
anyway,
I think one in the chat was saying, is the Springbank 13 organic, or I think I've never tried it. I've never tried the Springbank 13 before.
It's a bad luck number. I wouldn't drink it.
I would love to try it. I mean, it must be an older bottling. It must be something older.
So there is a spice note on this. I'm getting it's like a mild ginger cookie, ginger snap note. I'm getting the barrel cask. I'm definitely getting a little bit of bourbon cask influence, a distinctive maltiness. There's like the dried peach, dried apple notes, a little bit of vanilla, and then just a hint of funky cheese.
Right. And that you're on. Sorry, what one are you on right now? Oh, the 15. Nice. So you must have got that in 2019.
This is 2019. 2019.
Yeah.
It's not as funky as the Glen Scotia. And it's just sort of in fact, I wouldn't even describe it as unless someone pointed it out. I wouldn't even necessarily call it as funky.
Yeah. The Kilkerrans, the younger they are, I feel like the more the funkiness they get. It really kind of like when it gets older, you're losing a little bit of that. Whereas with Springbank, you don't lose it as much, in my experience. The older expressions still have that funkiness. You can kind of get it, like especially this 21. You definitely get the funk in here for sure.
So the challenging thing about characteristics. So you have your primary, secondary, and tertiary characteristics of wines and whiskeys. Primary is your source ingredient, whether it's a grape or a grain. Secondary is your production process, and the tertiary is the aging process. And so in studying wines and whiskeys is try where does this particular flavor come from? Where is it derived from? Is that come from the spirit? Is it coming from the cask? Is it coming from something else? And the fact that we have more than one distillery, unless they're all doing their cuts, because you could get a funk from a distillate in which you were cutting in a particular way.
For sure.
But you would probably get, I would say, maybe a little more sulfuric notes than you would necessarily this type of funk note.
Yeah, and Springbank does that weird 2.5 times distillation, right, where they combine their 2 times and their 3 times together to make this really interesting hybrid distillate. So that's another thing that makes it unique. Yeah,
but I think unless they all said, "Hey, let's develop this profile, and this is what we'll be known for," and they all. But the fact that all 3 of them have, similar profiles on that one particular note. Or at least within a ballpark, that there's something other than production in terms of it's got to be something else. And I don't know if the yeast character would make it through. This would be, I don't know how well Don Livermore knows, Campbeltown whiskeys, how much makes it through the distillation process. Say, like I was drawing that analogy from Brettanomyces in Burgundy wines, is if you had a particular yeast character in the fermentation process, could potentially give it a funk? Would that make it all the way through and into the cask?
Right.
And then of course there's just the place, the air, the place where it's at. Whiskey Throttle, how you doing, man? Daniel, long time no see. How you doing, man?
What's up, Daniel?
So so in terms of future studies, continuing studying whiskey. So I've been to the place. I've had my toes dipped into these distilleries, but I definitely have my work cut out for me to spend a lot more time on them and to be able to blind tasting retro engineer whiskey and know why it's there. That's sort of one of my goals is, but then to be able to identify this is from Campbeltown and not just say this is from Campbeltown, but why is it from Campbeltown? You always have to, in blind tasting, you have to show your math. You can't just say, this is what it is, and you're right. You have to show your math as to why it is you got there. And so, studying and understanding production and understanding regions and other influences. Anyway, it's just more for me to do in the future. So definitely, I don't know if I'll get it done this year because I already have my calendar full for the year. But maybe going into next year, definitely spend some more time with these producers.
Yeah. Yeah, go out and get yourself some core range Springbank. I mean, I know prices have gone up. Do you know what you pay for like the 10-year-old in your area now?
For
Springbank 10.
Springbank 10, I can find out real quick. So what I need to spend, what I need right now is actually shelf space. I don't want to be like Matt Zitrick, where he has to climb over boxes in the corner of his house to get to stuff. I don't want to. I'm not going to go there. Because at one point, people started to I think Eric got a problem. We need to have a meeting,
Yeah.
But I can check real quick. I can go to Total Wine and More.
It comes to a point where it just starts spilling over, and then the top of the shelves have whiskey on it, and the floor has whiskey, and there's whiskey, everywhere.
So a lot of these are actually 2, and some might be 3 layers deep. But like this, so like I've got more than one Trayvon 19. I've got more than one Ardbeg Black. I've got more than one Ardbeg Drum. So there's another of the same bottle that goes behind it. But a lot of these, and some of these will actually disappear. I'll take them down to Texas with me next time I go down there. But I need more shelf space. So it's the Springbank 10 is $70 before taxes.
Okay.
And the 15 is $130. And of course, I don't know what that converts to Canadian.
So it's for like $100 US is usually around 125 to 130 Canadian, give or take.
Now, this is the one I really love. I really, really like this one. And for an 8-year-old, it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, sure.
This is a Springbank 8-year-old fresh sherry cask from May 23rd, released May 23rd, 2019, 56.8, and there are only 1,100 bottles of this one.
So whenever
Springbank large enough bottles that both you and Rob, because I have some larger bottles are probably like this. So I can send them like that, and then you and Rob can split them.
Yeah, send it to me first. I'll give you the address.
I think I have your address. I think.
There you go. Yeah. Springbank. Whenever it says fresh, that means first fill. That's what they say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't know this. So that's their term for fresh.
Yeah. So a fresh. Yeah. Like if it says fresh sherry cask, that's a first fill cask.
So this one is a sherry bomb. I mean, the fig, the dates, the raisins. There's a character and there's a little slight nuttiness there. So let's instead of go back to my videos, studying wines when you're getting nutty character from a sherry cask, aged whiskey, you'll know that's from the oxidative aging from an Oloroso sherry cask because it doesn't have the floor like that, which is like a yeast on top of the wine, the way a Fino does, and so that's why I get that nutty character sort of on the background.
And that's cask strength. What's the ABV on that one?
56.8. 56.8. So these are all over 50.
I'm wondering if Springbank bottles or barrels their whiskey with a little bit, if they dilute it a little bit. So I noticed that a lot of their younger expressions coming in cask strength around mid 50s, and you maybe expect it maybe higher, like closer to 60. So I wonder if they do they're in the bourbon world where they add a little bit of water before barreling. Be interesting to find that out.
So most distilleries that I went to when I would do a tour, there's only one that was different. Almost all of them said they went into the cask at 63.5. But there was one that was 64. But almost all of them, it seemed almost like they would go into 63.5.
Yeah. So I'm like at 8 years old, I don't know if you'd expect that much loss of ABV, maybe, but it seems like they lose a lot of ABV in a short period of time. Well,
they don't call this, we're calling it cask strength.
That's true. I guess it doesn't.
That term isn't on here. It's not called cask strength.
Right.
It just gives you the ABV and 1,100 bottles. Which means it's more than one cask. You're not getting 1,100 bottles out of a single cask. So in terms of cask, you get maybe at this high ABV, you get 175, 200 bottles out of a 250 liter sherry butt.
Yeah. So maybe the other cask is like an older whiskey too.
Right. So. Yeah.
Yeah, but like some of those stuff, like Rob and I are both members of Springbank Society, and they release a bunch of single casks, the stuff that comes into our area. We've had some great ones. Some of them aren't anything special. They're good, but they're not like to talk about great. But some of them are really, really nice.
Now this one, of course, I've had a couple of whiskeys before, so I'm not coming to it with a new palate. But even at that ABV, it's not like kapow. It's not grabbing it. It doesn't have a huge bite. Mm-hmm. It's got intensity of flavor, but it's not biting. It's not soft either, but it's very, very dangerously drinkable at this particular level.
Yeah, and see, like this Glen Scotia I have here, the Victoriana, it does say cask strength 54.2. But yeah, this thing drinks dangerously well for the ABV and for the age. I mean, I'm not sure how old it is, but I wouldn't venture it's much more than 8 to 10.
So in terms of like all the whiskeys you guys review, I know you guys have some, because you guys complained about it a lot, is availability.
Right.
The chance of availability.
Yeah.
You guys are predominantly Scotch.
Yep.
And then you two different channels. You guys are friends and you do a lot of stuff together, but you two separate channels and share bottles and stuff. So I'm kind of talking at the same time. Would you say Campbeltown is a favorite region, or do you have a particular favorite region or producer favorites?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we have like a region that we go to. Obviously, Campbeltown, having the 3 distilleries there are all amazing. There's no, they're all great. So yeah, we buy a lot of Springbank, we buy a lot of Kilkerran, and not so much Glen Scotia, but we do have a few Glen Scotias. But I mean, I think we just go for the unique quality of stuff. I mean, right now we're on a huge Glenallachie kick. Their 10-year-old cask strength, batch 3 and batch 4, they're out now, are so good. And batch 5, we should actually be getting batch 5 next week. So yeah, even like their 12-year-old that came out in 2020 is amazing. Their 15-year-old, really good, the new stuff. And they change up their maturation too. You look at their 12-year-old that came out in 2018 or 2019, completely different than the 12-year-old in 2020.
So I don't know if he's watching up. There's a gentleman by the name of Eli. He owns a whiskey shop 1.25 miles from my house. And I know he watches my channel. Sometimes Eli's a great guy. I mean, even if I don't buy anything, just go by there, shoot the shit, and talk about whiskey. He's got really, really high quality stuff, and he hunts that stuff down for me. If he gets something where he only got 3 bottles, Erik, do you want one?
Yeah.
I was in there the other day, and they've got a bunch of Gallagher there. They don't have any at Total Wine anymore. So I just watched your guys' video, guys, the whiskey rant, what you're talking about, Gallagher. Mm-hmm. Or as they say in Italy, Gregolacci.
Gregolacci, yeah, sure, yeah. Yeah, tell them to bring in some of that. Just like the newest 12-year-old is such a great whiskey.
So I'll definitely have to drop in tomorrow and pick up some. And before they start disappearing, before they get too popular. How are the prices? Because I think a lot of people who are maybe perhaps Glendronach fans are going to convert over to Glenallachie and start buying their stuff. How are the prices in your area on those? Yeah,
so the 12-year-old Rob paid $90 Canadian, so that's about $70 US. So it's on the higher end of the 12-year-olds, but the quality you're getting 46% non-chill filtered, no added color, and the quality is great. We talked about how Glenallachie is investing 100 million pounds a year into their sherry casks. So they're really trying to redefine the characteristic, not necessarily redefine, because they weren't really releasing that many single malts prior to Billy Walker purchasing them, but really they're trying to come out and brand their whiskey as the sherry cask focus. And they do use other casks. They use ex-bourbon, they use virgin oak, PX, and Oloroso, all in the 12-year-old. And it makes for this really nice, complex whiskey, but like lots of rich sherry in that one for sure. So if you're a sherry head, definitely look for the 2020 bottling of the 12-year-old, because it's great stuff.
So do you think he's doing something new that wasn't at Glendronach, or is this sort of like the Glenallachie is the old school Glendronach, or do you think he's doing something different?
I mean, I think what he's doing is he's recasking a bunch of the stuff they've had in that warehouse. I think that's kind of the conclusion that I don't know if he's ever really talked about exactly that, but I think that's what he's doing. He's recasting a bunch of stuff that they've had there, and making this profile predominantly sherry. I think that what he's doing is he's going around to these distilleries and just finding the next diamond in the rough and just revamping it. I mean, no one knew about Glenallachie before he got there, really, because they were just sourcing to blends, I think, mainly is what they were doing before that. But yeah, I mean, he's got this eye for finding, just revamping distilleries and just absolutely making a name for them.
So it's similar to, I like to watch the shows where, there's one show called This Old House, and basically you find an old house, perhaps built in the 1800s, and it's really, I mean, it looks like really, really worn down, but you can see it has good bones. And it's really cool, in a half an hour. Of course, it takes them weeks and weeks and weeks to do these things, but to see them bring back to life and just a real, like an old Victorian house,
right,
or something like that. I like watching these shows just to see the before and after effect of what they can put into and fixing it out, or cars, like the guys who do automobile rebuilds, the hot rods and stuff. There's something similar to that, although you're just watching on television. There's something similar to that in you see a distillery, it has the potential.
Right.
It's been lost, but we can save it and we can revive it, bring back, and put some new lifeblood into it and bring it back to life. I've seen that with vineyards, where you go by a vineyard and it hasn't been, maintained, has been manicured. It's overgrown, but it's, 60-year-old vines.
Yeah.
They got some, the bottom of the vines are this big and they're like these little monsters, but they haven't been loved. So they need someone, they need a vineyard manager with a loving hand to go in there and they save vineyards, particularly Zinfandel here in California. It's going to bring up wine again. And they go back
how long they're talking about it.
They essentially rescue these old vines, but could be like old vine Garnacha or a Mourvèdre that were planted by the early Italian immigrants 100 years ago. Or Zinfandel is Primitivo down in Apulia in Italy. So there were waves of immigrants who would come in the United States, the Germans, the Italians, the Spanish, then the Italians, and then the Germans, and so forth. And so with them came restaurants, food, wine, these things that they brought over with them. So, and grapes and so forth. So I've seen old vineyards that were rescued. They didn't plow them under. They didn't pull them out and put in freaking condominiums. They're able to save these things. And so if that's what he's doing with these distilleries, essentially bringing back to life Glenallachie and taking that magic touch that he had with GlenDronach and now applying it to Glenallachie. It's just sad if GlenDronach decides to go a different profile and go a different route.
Yeah. I mean, even the newer 15 that came out, it's good whiskey, but of course it's not the just pure Oloroso that it used to be. Now it's a mix of Oloroso and PX, which isn't bad by any means. It just doesn't have that same feel that the old one did. And now them removing the non-chill filtering, I mean, you can tell where that distillery is going, which is unfortunate because it was such good stuff.
But that's really that's what Glengyle is. Glengyle is a resurrected distillery. I think during the Second War, the property was used as a shooting range.
Wow.
For target practice.
Yeah.
But that's, and the fact that's probably the first of the wave of reviving distilleries, and very, very early was actually Glengyle Distillery, and it's still a work in progress. They haven't finished it yet.
Yeah, I mean they're pumping out great stuff, and I'm surprised to hear that they're only open in a couple of months. Like they only produce whiskey a few months a year. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they only go into production about 3 months out of the year.
Yeah.
So that's why the limited release, and it's the same staff. Now that was what it was when I was there in 2019, but I mean, as we walked along, I could see them building the warehouse. So they might have the warehouse done by now. I would think they would. But if you went into the Springbank warehouse, you could see some stamped Springbank and some stamped Glencairn. In fact, you might have seen them in the video that I saw.
Right.
So of the core range, which would you say is the QPR whiskey, best quality price ratio whiskey out of the core range
for Springbank?
Yeah.
I'd say probably the 12-year-old. I think the 12-year-old is coming at a cask strength. It's their only core range that comes at a cask strength. Like I said, each year is different. I just reviewed the 2020. Didn't like as much as the 2019. But what you're getting with that 12-year-old is a huge, vast array of flavors. For instance, the 2020 release, it had Burgundy casks in it, which was the first time that they added that. Rum, ex-bourbon, sherry. Each year they're mixing up a little bit, but the complexity of flavors, the funk element. You want to know about Springbank funk? You don't have to go any further than the 12-year-old cask strength. Prices for that, I paid $120 Canadian dollars for it or so right around 100 US. I think prices are going up on those. I think people are finding them for a little bit more than that now. But still, even for $100 US, 120 US, it's still well worth it for what you're getting in that bottle. So I think that one is the one to go to. If you can't find the 12, the 10 is great, especially the 2019 10-year-old. That was a great year for that 10-year-old. If you're going for Kilkerran, the 12. The Kilkerran 12 is great. It's good value. I think it's like, you can probably find it for like $50 or $60 US, maybe even less. I'm not sure. But that's a great one to get into for Kilkerran for sure.
So Donna Pastor was saying, makes sense. Those months were probably Springbank does its annual maintenance. I go, right. So a lot of distilleries, they take a month or two off during the summertime, and they go on vacation or whatever. They head down to Spain or something. But it sounds like these guys, as far as we know, they head on over. Now, so Springbank also has a school. Of course, during the COVID crap, they probably weren't doing that, but they had a school where during a certain time of the year, they would have people come in. They pay to work in the distillery. I had signed up and was on the waiting list. In fact, Daniel Whittington was trying to get in there as well, and we were hoping to go over there together. And then, 2020 hit and COVID hit. Right. But it's difficult to get into, and you're going to work your ass off. I was thinking, shit, I probably need to go to the gym for 6 months.
You got to train to do it,
yeah. before going over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of labor and stuff like that, they like that time of year because they get more work done. Right. People paying to work in the distillery versus getting paid to work at this distillery.
Right. Yeah, that'd be cool. They do it kind of like a summer camp, right? I think.
Right. Yeah, basically. I can't remember if it's a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. It sounded like it would be fun. If they let you drink whiskey at the end of the day, for sure.
Right. And then there's one distillery up in Speyside. And man, I hate it when my brain does this. I drove by it a bunch of times. They have a 1 day, all day class. We get to do a little bit in the production all day. And they only do it 1 day out of the week. And so when I was up there, I wanted to do it, but it didn't fit into my schedule where I was hitting all the other distilleries.
Yeah.
Gosh, I hate it when my brain does this.
I think for me, for like touring, because eventually I will go to Scotland and do tours, but I feel like really what I really want from a distillery tour is I want to go into the warehouses and just, grab the thief and just do a barrel pull, drink the whiskey, and then move to the next one. I can hear about the history another time. I don't care about the history. I just want to drink the whiskey. I want to know how you make it and what I'm getting, and I just want to drink it straight from the cask.
So I'd say Lagavulin, definitely, and Ian McAllister, I think is his last name. No, Ian. Somebody will put in there. Ian, not last Mick something. He's about this tall, an older. He's been there probably like 50 years if he hasn't retired yet, and he's an absolute hoot. Yeah. But you want to do they call it a warehouse tour. You're not touring. You're sitting down and drinking like 10 or 12 whiskeys straight from the cask.
Yeah.
Straight from a thief. That's the kind of experience you want. Ian McLeod? Is it Ian McLeod? It could be Ian McLeod. Anyway, the guy's a hoot. I think when man, I'm getting old. I'm getting tired. And it's time for dinner. I'm forgetting names. They're over there near San Francisco. Someone else will remind me. Husband and wife. They're from England. She's Indian, but they're both originally from England.
Oh, Whiskey Mystery.
Whiskey Mystery.
Yeah.
And now their names are completely slipped my mind, and I feel bad because I've been to their house. Anyway, they did a similar event. I think it was at Bruichladdich. At Bruichladdich, they did a similar event. So if you look at the various tours they have, some of them will have like that, but a lot of them are very touristy, and you kind of hear the same thing over and over and over again. But I didn't mind it so much. I still like, yeah, Phil and Deepa.
Yeah.
Sorry, Phil and Deepa. If you haven't been watching this, I'm sorry. I feel so bad. I'm getting long tired. My name is written on my underwear in case I forget. Erik Wait. Yeah, my name's Erik Wait. That's my name. That's my name. Erik Wait. It says it on my underwear. Otherwise, sometimes you go, Fruit of the Loom. I don't know, man. I don't think my mom named me that.
That's your middle name.
That's my middle name. So, what do you got coming up on your channel in the near future?
Lots of stuff. Gonna review. I think I got next a Cavalan, the Cavalan Fino. That one's coming out soon, and I have Balvenie 15-year-old, the old discontinued single barrel, the ex-bourbon single barrels will be coming out.
Cavalans are expensive. They're pretty steep, and I've tasted them at tastings, and I tasted several of them in the vault down there in Texas, but I haven't reviewed any yet. I haven't bought any yet because they are fairly steep. But eventually, I'll get around to them.
Yeah, they do get pricey, but some of like their Solus single cask stuff is so good, and we can get them at a pretty decent price. I'm a member of the Cava Fan Group, which is a group where we can get private barrel selections and stuff like that, and we do get decent deals on some whiskey, so it does make it a little better. But yeah, great stuff. That distillery is they source like the best casks, it seems to me. Like their cask selections and the money, they must pay a lot for them, and maybe that's why this has a high price, and they do lose a lot to Angel Share. Right.
I would kind of like to try them and then compare because of the climate. Compare with Indian whiskeys. In fact, Rampur, which is another Indian whiskey producer, I'd like to do a series on Indian whiskeys. Basically, you have Paul John, not Jean Paul, but Paul John.
Yeah.
Amrut and Rampur. Yeah. So do a short series on them and get to know them. But they're similar in terms of the Angel Share and the intensity. Although Texas doesn't. Texas, I think, has some intensity, but I think they have more of the wild swings of temperature that's different. It just gets hot and stays freaking hot.
Right.
Thailand or Taiwan, gets hot, just stays freaking hot. Yeah. Texas, one time when we were down in Fredericton, just before the Bachelor's Ball, we landed and it was 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and the next day it was like 85.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so it's just like up and up and up. That's kind of the insanity there.
Well, I'll send you a sample of this Cavalan Fino because I think it's the best Fino cask that I've tried for sure. Because Fino casks are kind of few and far between, and some of them are great, and some of them are just okay. But I think Cavalan does it so well with their Fino.
So I tried. In fact, for the class I taught down there in Texas, we had the Lefroy Fino. I was not. Mm-hmm. One, I didn't think it was that great of a whiskey, and two, I don't think it really reflected the Fino wine very well.
It was very light. Yeah, it was very light.
But I've got a Tobermory and a Tomatin Fino and a Tomatin Manzanilla Fino, which is just a different region other than the here is Triangle. So looking forward to getting those into the near future. I keep talking about doing the sherry thing, but it's going to be this series is going to be as in depth, and hence require as much editing time as the video I just put out on 10 Wines Every Whiskey Lover Should Know. I put probably close to 40 hours into that video.
Yeah, and it showed too. That was a great video.
Yeah, and so it's quantity versus quality, and it's you spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes recording, and all the rest of the time is edit, and putting stuff together.
Yeah,
but I thought it worked out really, really well. Mm-hmm. All right. So, hey, I got a couple of minutes here left. Anything you want to leave with the viewers here? Tell about your channel. Anything? If you guys haven't subscribed, your channel is probably 2.5 times the size of mine. I've got 11 plus. You're probably hitting around 27.
I think it's getting close to 30,000 subs.
Oh, okay.
It's getting up there. Yeah, if you haven't checked it out, Sipper Social Club. You know, I do a lot of Scotch, bourbon, world whiskeys. Not so much Irish, but that's going to change. Got some Irish whiskeys coming in. You can check out the Whiskey Rant. It's a podcast that myself and Rob from Whiskey and the Six do. We release those as often as we can. One just came out recently about the effect that a very elite master distiller has. We talk about Billy Walker and his exit from Glendronach and his new passion project at Glenallachie and the stuff they've got going on there. So
That was really well done.
Yeah.
Really well done. All righty, man. Hey, I want to thank you for coming on. We hit about an hour and a half, a little longer than I normally do. But I want to thank you for coming on, particularly since it actually was sort of short notice. Usually I plan these a couple weeks at a time. And one of these days, I want to have both you and Rob, what might have to do on a different day of the week, something that fits in with his schedule. But one of these days, definitely want to have both of you guys on.
Yeah, no, 100%. When we get together at Rob's place for a record, we'll maybe do a live show as well. It'd be great.
Yeah, one of these days, I'm gonna get my ass up to Canada and hopefully it shows up there as well. Look
Come on up. Come on up.
All righty. So, hey, I want to thank everyone for watching. I hope everybody have a great weekend. Next week, I got another guest on, and I'm also going to go on this at 6 o'clock. I try to be consistent so that even if people don't get the notification, hey, it's Friday night, 5 o'clock, Erik's coming on. So I want as much as possible to stick to the same time slot on the same day. But when you have guests on and people have different schedules, particularly if they're in the UK or Ireland or something, you got to work it out. It works out. But next week, I'm going to have, no, I didn't remember. I'm going to script the name of his channel. Drum and Dramming.
Drums and drams.
Yeah, Drum and Dram. He's going to be on next week.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Yeah, great new channel. He's got some good content. Yeah,
he's doing really well. And it's Sipper Social Club, not Social Sipper Club.
A lot of people say Social Sippers Club or Strippers Club or it doesn't matter.
As long as they spell Erik with a K, I'm happy.
There you go.
So, all right. Cheers, man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Cheers, guys.